Good morning, everybody. My name is HD Cassidy, and I want to welcome you to my podcast.
Welcome to the Real Deal podcast with HD Cassidy, where we unravel the past to step boldly into the future. Today's episode is on Boomers versus Millennials, with special guest Brittanie Manson.
I'm really excited about the podcast today because I'm going to be talking to a really wonderful girl that I have met about a year ago or so. We're going to talk today about the subject of baby boomers versus millennials. And I'm excited about what she's got to share today. And I think you're going to be really excited about it too, because there's just a lot of conversations around how baby boomers are positively affecting people and sometimes negatively. And on the other flip side of that coin, I would say that sometimes millennials will do the same thing with baby boomers. So we're just going to have a nice conversation. We hope that you really enjoy it.
It's an honor to be here with you.
Well,
She could have had anybody.
I'm just really excited about this because really, truly, you are a friend to me. You have been a source of comfort in this time. You've been a source of information and encouragement as I've moved to this wonderful province that we live in. I look at you and I know that you're a millennial.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to talk to you a little bit about how you feel about being a millennial and being born into this time frame.
I have mixed feelings about it, I think. Sometimes I love it and I'm like, yes, I was made for this. Like, I love technology. I'm on it all the time. And then other times I resent it. It's the only way I know how to live because it's the only way I've ever lived. I think everybody feels that way, but it's a lot of information all of the time. It's a lot of overstimulation, a lot of comparison. There's a lot of issues, I think, that each generation deals with. Whatever generation they're in, that it's easy to look at, oh, they have it so good, or they had it better than us then, or now we have it better than you did. But I think there's good and bad. I like to take a lot of inspiration, I guess, from simpler times and then pair it with the modern conveniences and technology that we have access to.
And we do. We have a lot of conveniences, I think, in the time frame that we're living in that we never had back in the day. So what would you say, if you're looking at a baby boomer such as myself, what would you say would be some of the positive influences that our generation has had on your generation, do you think?
I think baby boomers specifically, they are very good at community in a way that we've kind of lost touch with. They're good at values and hard work and ethics and things like that. They'll stand up for themselves. There's a lot of things like that where we've lost some of them. I think it's like, learn from the things that you like. And if there's things that they did do that were like maladaptive, that weren't great, and we don't want to do it now, then just take what you like and leave the rest.
Do you feel like the baby boomers have failed the generation of millennials in any way with respect to thinking that we know it all and we don't listen to the next generation? Do you feel like we're hearing impaired when it comes to how you guys feel, that we think we know it all and that we're not open enough to hear your thoughts and your point of view?
I think it depends on who you talk to, really.
Okay.
Really, truly. I think some people, I've met boomers that have a very open mind, and those are the ones you see that are still growing and learning and trying to do new things. And they're not competing with the next generation, but they're like, what can we learn from you? And then they're kind of going alongside them. They're really fun to be around, and they're listening without a goal necessarily to change or punish. Where I think the failure might come in is if they just think, because we did it this way and you're doing it this way, that means what we did is wrong. And so I think that mentality would be not right. So it's not that if I do it different than you did, it's not that what you did is wrong. It's that we're living in a different world now, and some things need to adjust and change.
Well, that's really good, because I'm thinking while you're talking, I think that is one of the negative points about boomers. And I've fallen into that category from time to time also. But I find sometimes millennials are really not open to hear, not everybody, as you have said before about the boomers, but I find that a lot of millennials feel like that they know it better and they're not open to us helping. And so
Right.
therefore it feels like on the boomer side of things that we're not relevant anymore.
Right. And like that all of your life experience is not useful because we don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get that. I think that happens a lot. Sometimes it's two situations. I wonder if it's like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
There's a lot of junk that we don't want and we accidentally get rid of everything.
Yeah.
Maybe not that we don't want to hear it, but we need to come at it in a different way. And I think that's on both sides, the millennial sides and the boomer sides. We think it's all or nothing, but I think if it was just a pivot in approach, we would be more receptive to certain things.
So then there is a belief system then in the boomers that is coming across that is in part negative to the millennials and the other generations also, but primarily because I'm speaking with you.
Yeah.
That being said, I think that we can learn a lot from you if we're open then to hear what you've got to say to us without any kind of judgment or criticism. And I wonder then if it's because sometimes millennials can criticize and then there's a blockade put up and we also as boomers then can criticize you. So therefore that's where the breakdown comes.
I think that's I think if you remove the criticism on both parts, but I think if we replaced criticism with curiosity and knowing that just because we're doing it differently doesn't mean what you did was wrong, it's just needed for a different time, then we could like come together almost with like humility and feeling like it might be different. We're going to get rid of some things, but there's still a core of something that we need from you. I think a lot of millennials see the parts that damage themselves. And so they don't want to recreate those patterns. And so then they're like, well, yeah, I don't want your advice because this turned into that. But I think if the boomers could kind of back up a little bit and not take offense to the fact that they're doing it differently and just kind of be curious and then say, you know what, I'm interested to see like and hear your perspective, what you're doing, like why you're doing it. And then as that goes, then that would build trust. And that trust would then have the millennial being like, I'm safe here. I can be like, okay, I've done it my way. I'm wondering though, is there something that you could teach me that I don't know about? Because it's never going to be all or nothing, that there's nothing we need from you. There's a lot we need from you, but we just need the freedom to be able to assess it for ourselves, apply the old wisdom to the new day that we're in. Some of it might not be relevant, but that doesn't mean the heart behind it is not relevant.
Right. So you're speaking then from a mature Christian perspective.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So then what about people who don't have the spiritual knowledge and understanding in their life, which doesn't make it bad or good.
Right.
But at this point, it's like, okay, you're talking about you're quite deep actually. You're more deep than other people that I've spoken with of your age. So then do you think your spirituality factors into how you present yourself and how you think about people who are older than yourself, boomers, et cetera? So I'm wondering about that, if your spirituality plays any part in this, do you think?
I think a lot of my values have come from my Christianity and even a lot of my ego crushing, I think is the thing I want to say, is that even if you're not spiritual, you might understand the concept of this ego of, well, that's what I want, or I'm going to feel bad about myself if I don't have my way, or if I have to admit any wrongdoing, it'll just feel so bad I can't even go there, right?
Right.
But I feel like when you know your identity is in God and you know that these are his values and the things that he really cares about, and he has a different perspective than we have sometimes, it enables you to be like, zoom out. Okay, I'm not looking at this from Brittanie's perspective. I'm looking at this from everybody's perspective and God's perspective. And I think he really helps you to like kill your own ego. If there's something that I'm feeling, I need to know that that might not be helpful. It might actually be harmful to go that route, but that you can lay it down and see a different perspective. And there might be part of it that's right, part of it that's wrong, without laying it down. And if you clench it so tightly, you're not going to be able to see that other perspective. You have to know that you are not your behaviors.
Yeah.
So just because in the past you did something a certain way, that doesn't mean you were bad. And I think there's a lot of mentalities and old mentalities that we have to heal from.
Yeah.
And so when you walk through that process of healing yourself and you realize those behaviors I was doing were because of a wound that I had. And now that I'm healing that wound and I know that it's not me, it was just because of that wound and I'm still okay, I'm still good, God still loves me, whatever, then you can understand it. And then you can understand if that person's behaviors are not because they're bad, it's also likely a wounding from them. So when God heals you, when you're healed and you're walking in healing and you understand what went wrong, it enables you to have compassion for yourself, which enables you to have compassion for other people.
True. I like that. I like what you just said there. And I've been thinking about, are millennials then able to see, do you think, that boomers have walked through some traumatic experiences themselves? That might be the reason that they respond negatively to you, as opposed to, as you mentioned before, you not taking it personal. Do you think then that it may be a really good idea then for millennials and the other generations to look at boomers and really do some thought processes about who they've got on the other side of the table and what they may have gone through, so that they can deal more compassionately with the older generation? And not to say that that is all your responsibility, but rather, can millennials look at people our age, for an example, and wonder and ask the questions if the platform is correct? Tell me your story. What is it that you've gone through, so that the younger generation can understand the older generation?
I think, yes, they can, once they've gone through the process of healing themselves and giving themselves self-compassion and being able to view things through a non-critical lens. Because what you view yourself through is how you're going to view other people. So if you always have this critical voice in you, you are going to have a critical voice with them, right? But if you heal yourself and you understand, okay, that was my trauma, okay, and that's their trauma, and now I want to hear their story. Yes, I do. So if we go through that system, that millennial, they were able to look inward, right? In order to ask God to take them through their healing, self-reflection, a lot of self-accountability, a lot of hard things. And so that enables them to understand the other person and hear that they have trauma in that too. And it gives you to allow them to have a way out. Like, I know you're not trying to do this, but that gives them a little window where you see them. But I also think on the boomer side of it, they can't put that responsibility on the millennial to take control of the situation. A lot of times the boomer would have to do a lot of the work themselves, because if you get into a situation where the millennial has done that, and we have a lot of access to a lot of information and things that they didn't have. So if they've gone through all of that and they understand, they have self-compassion, they have compassion for you, and then they go to the boomer and it's the same thing. But if that boomer does not want to do any of that self-reflection, there's kind of a wall. So it's hard for the millennial to go over and around that wall. You can by pivoting the way you talk, I think, by being non-critical in your speech, by offering a way out. I know you're not trying to, but it feels like this. By having strong boundaries for yourself, for what's okay for yourself. I think it's always going to take two people, and for each person to realize, I'm my responsibility, you're your responsibility. When we both can have boundaries and self-compassion and curiosity and respect, then we can have these really impactful, interesting conversations.
So do you think then that there is more of a responsibility on a boomer to take that lead, as opposed to somebody such as yourself and others who are really quite spiritually mature in those areas? Do you feel like it is the boomer's responsibility, by and large, to create the environment for safety?
It's interesting because on one hand, I would say yes, it is, because as a millennial, I'm not looking at the Gen Z being like, because you have more access to technology, you need to do this, and I'm just going to be here. And when you create safety, then I'm going to have a conversation with you. For me as a millennial and knowing that Gen Z is out there, I need to be the ones doing all of the work. And then how do I bridge to them? But I also think something comes into play where it's the level of maturity that you have. So that might bypass what generation you're in because of the access to information. Mental health was so not okay to talk about.
That's
then.
true.
So that is traumatic on its own. The things you went through, you weren't able to have a hard day. You weren't able to have depression or anxiety. You weren't able to need postpartum care. You weren't able to grieve properly, all of that. So all of those instances was traumatic for you. So then I think us, where we are as millennials, we can understand that it's a gift that we're able to not only recognize that we need to protect ourselves and that we were able to grow because of that safety, but that if there is other generations and they weren't able to grow in that way, it's not necessarily because that person is bad. It's just there was no safety created for them.
Well,
So
again, you're responding, though, in a way that you have done some homework and you've done some
Right.
research in
Yeah.
this, and which is really great. I'm looking at it from the standpoint of how then do you bridge the gap between those generations if you're aware of that and the person has not had that ability
Right.
or whatever to move through those healing dynamics that you're explaining and expressing, then how then, let's just say that person just has never had and you recognize it, the millennial will recognize it. How then do you have a relationship, or do you have a relationship with that person based on that information then?
So what I think is you can have a relationship if it's not abusive or ongoingly
Well, of
harmful.
course.
But the thing is a lot of it is harmful. And so that's what I think where we have this big divide right now is we're like, that's harmful. And I think, I don't know if it's what boomers think, but they think an abuser is like this horrible person who sets out to abuse people. And I don't believe that. I think an abuser is a deeply wounded person and they're not trying to abuse per se. They're trying to keep them safe.
Yes.
I think of it like a porcupine. Out of safety, they're going to go like this and they're going to put those things out. And that is scary and harmful to that person. Now, if you're not harmful, if you're a little mouse, I don't know how porcupines work, but if you're a little mouse and you come up to that little ball, is getting close to that thing going to hurt you over and over and over again? If it thinks you're a threat, it's going to spike you. So how much can you be around somebody like that?
Well, then
Without
it
getting
comes back
hurt?
to boundaries.
Yes, then it's
really
just boundaries. So if you are the millennial or if you're the person who has this awareness of it, I think you don't put it on that person personally. It's not their fault. They are perceiving a threat and they are trying to protect themselves. And with that trying to protect themselves, it might turn abusive. And not they're abusive, but it's just they're protecting themselves in a way that could do you harm, like a porcupine. So then I think it's up to that person to be aware of it and try not to make it worse. Have boundaries for yourself. I can do it to this level before it harms me. I can do it this amount until it harms me. I can ask for basic respect, and if I don't get it, that's okay. I think it's just knowing for yourself what you can put up with before it becomes actually harmful, because we put up with a lot. And I think that's why you see a lot of stunted people, because they think, oh, they love me. They're not meaning to. They've always been that way. They're not trying to harm me, but yet they will stunt you as a person. And I think that's really sad when you see people who have all this potential and purpose in the world and they can't go forward because they have these people who are harming them just for perceived danger and threat. So it's a very delicate thing to try to walk out. It's very difficult, but I think you have to have compassion and boundaries and curiosity.
That's very good. Lots of food for thought there for sure. On the other side of that thought, I do think that baby boomers have been misunderstood a lot because of those dynamics, I think. But on the positive side of things, before we wrap all this up, what do you see the benefit of some of the boomers that you know, even the ones that have got issues, and I think we all have issues, right? What do you see as a positive in your life and in the millennial generation from the ones that you know, the ones that you've heard about, and you see them on TV all the time? You've got the boomers on TV all the time, you know, in Hollywood and all that kind of stuff. What do you see as beneficial?
You know what? I think they want better for you than what they had because they felt the pain.
I like that.
You know? So they experienced it, and a lot of even their coping mechanisms, it's because they don't want you or them to have to feel that pain again.
Correct.
So that's a really amazing
I like that.
thing.
Thank
it's
you.
Really good. And so you just have to recognize, and it's funny because I was talking with somebody and we were talking about like, oh yeah, my mom, like she wanted to make sure I wasn't in a bad situation, pushed me to go to university because it pushed me to get a degree. And it's so interesting because then you get opened up to all of these different things, this psychology, these mindsets, these people, like this life experience. And so it's almost like because they wanted better for you, it adds this layer of conflict, I guess. And it's like, I think that's something to recognize as like a good thing on the boomer side. If you're seeing that directly with those people, give yourself a pat on the back because that means you pushed them to want better for themselves than what you had. And it also means you didn't do as bad of a job as you might have thought. Like you can be proud of the fact that this person is standing up for themselves, is trying to heal, is doing things to help other people. And like that shines on you that you did that as a good job. So it might be challenging in the middle. It might feel like separation for a time. But you can also be proud of them for standing up for themselves and for trying to heal and for trying to do better, just like how you wanted better for them. So I think that helps both generations to realize because it helps the boomer realize that they're doing different because I wanted different for them.
Yeah.
And it helps the millennial because you understand that like we're having this conflict because I didn't stay stuck and because they were harmed, they didn't want me to be harmed. And so like, look at where I am now because of it. What would you say is a benefit that you see millennials having on society or on boomers directly? Like, where do you see that there's a positive from millennials?
I think with you and with others, I think you guys have got a fresh awareness of who you are by and large and what you want for your lives. And see, that was much different than what we grew up with because we were focused on just making a survival mode. And so we had our children, you know, helped raise our grandchildren. We went through poverty like crazy. We were all broke back in 50s and 60s. We were post-war, World War II. So we had to grow up in a very different environment. So I think for you guys to come into our lives, I love younger people because it helps you think and remain young in your thinking. That is one of the biggest benefits I see. So when I have a relationship with you and with others, it's like it's a freshness to me. And I really, really like that because I feel like baby boomers have gotten really old before their time mentally.
I agree.
And emotionally. And it's not because that's criticism, but it's just evaluating it because I had a choice. I remember when I was in church in British Columbia, I would look around at some of the older ones, the World War II survivors and stuff like that were older than me. I'd look at them and see how they were aging and how they were thinking and what they were doing and how they were speaking and how did they handle their money and how did they handle their kids and stuff. And I remember looking at a number of them, and God bless them because they were such beautiful people. But I felt like I needed to have something different than that. See? And so I find when you come into my life, when others come into my life, there's things that I really like about you. I really do I like a lot about you. I think that you're very educated and stuff, but the breath of fresh air is really what I'm saying. The way you look at life, the way you think about life, the way you think about spirituality, the way you think about parenting. I like that kind of stuff. I don't necessarily 100% agree with you, but that's my prerogative. And you wouldn't agree with how I raised my children, but that doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just a different
way of doing things. But the thing is, I look at it and I say, where's the fruit? I always look at fruit. Where's the fruit in my life? Where's the fruit in your life? And so I just find it exhilarating and refreshing to have younger people in my life. And the very fact that you can come and help me do this,
So
and the
cool.
very fact that you can work with me on my website and different things like that. I could never have done it with somebody my age, probably. There might be the
Right.
exception, but probably not. And so for that, I'm very grateful because I find you invaluable about that kind of stuff.
Thank you. That's what I would like to do, because I think I do see so much from your generation that we need, that took a life to understand and
Yeah.
get there. And so we need it. We need your voice. We need your stories and the things that you're saying. So I think if there's a way that we can pair some of this together,
Yeah.
I think that is what the world needs, because you can save people so much heartache.
Oh, for sure.
And it's so funny because you said you were poor. Everybody was poor. It was hard. There was a lot of trauma. And I think now we also have trauma. People feel poverty, although we're like the richest people have ever been in like so many years.
Yes.
So I think it's really helpful not to forget how far we've come. Hearing the way somebody else used to live, not only does it give you perspective to appreciate what you have, which if you don't appreciate it and have any perspective, you take it for granted. And then you're miserable anyway, right? Because you're like, oh, I'm just had a hot shower in my spa-like bathroom, but I'm mad. I don't have enough money like to get the thing I want, and you're miserable, right?
Yeah.
So that helps the generations now realize how much we really have and take for granted, but it also helps to think maybe we don't need as much as we think we do, because like I'm a minimalist, right? So
I am too.
Parenting and everything, I'm like, there was a way. Back in the day, they didn't have a TV. They didn't have a toy room full of games. They didn't have endless new things and toys and stuff. So how were they parenting then? And is there things that we've forgotten about that could help us in our day now?
Yeah.
I think it's not that we have to agree on everything, but it's like, look for the gold that we can sift out and be like, you know what? Even though we live in this fast society of things moving in the internet and toys, maybe there's some truth that you lived that I can put into my life now. And it would just solve so many of my little issues.
Yeah, it would, I think. I think it was because the demand was put onto us to raise our kids in a different way than you're raising your children because of social media and all that. And the finance. I mean, it's easy enough to go and get the finance through credit cards. Back in the day, there was no credit cards, so we had to do what we had to do to get by. And I think that's partially when I think about finance and how we have represented ourselves to your generation, I think has been in a lot of ways, we have done you a disservice. We really have.
What do you mean?
Well, with respect to finance, I think we didn't teach our kids how to manage money, how to save, how to invest. That's a big deal. Invest. We were so caught up with where the next buck was coming from that we needed to look at it from a whole different perspective. For me, and it's not like that for everybody, of course. So whoever's watching this, it doesn't mean that everybody was like this, because there were other people in the world that learned how to deal with their money, how to save, how to invest. I was not one of them, because that wasn't given to me, because my mom and her family came over from Eastern Germany, and it was remarkable what they went through and how we even ate, to be honest with you. So they never taught us how to save.
No.
They never taught us how to invest. They were just surviving. So that survival mentality came to us. Boomers, we taught our kids how to survive.
Yes.
Now I look at my daughter and my son at this point. My son has got investments and he's doing all sorts of things. Thank God. But I didn't do that, nor did my husband for it, which is something I really regret. I hate that he had to learn it a different way. My daughter also. And so that is where I think we have dropped the ball.
You know, I was thinking about that too, how do you know when you're in it, how to share your values and get it to come across right, and how to teach it as a lesson instead of something that's going to turn into a new coping mechanism. Because what we see with the generations is like, they had such scarcity and lack that then you get hoarders because you never want to feel that lack again.
That's true.
And you didn't actually learn how to deal with money better. You just learned how to hoard, right? And then you come to the next generation, me, and I'm a minimalist. And you're like passing this down. But what I would like to think is, for me and myself, how do I pass it down to my kids properly without them going to the next extreme? If I'm a minimalist, how do I make sure they're not going to turn into a hoarder again?
Yeah.
And I think it's when you're communicating your story, when you're teaching these lessons, to not do it out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
If fear or control is at the root,
Yep.
then it needs to go. But if it's a lesson, like, I want to teach you this, I want to
Mm-hmm.
leave this to you. I like how you said it. Like, we did not give him that. It's not necessarily the physical things you give your kids. Yeah. It's the lessons and the understanding that you give them. So if I can teach my kids about money, not out of lack or fear or not out of trauma, I'm not getting rid of everything because it's traumatic to me to have hoards. We're just doing it because we want to steward what we have well. We want to take care of everything that we have. We want to be able to give when we need to give. We want to have time where we need to have time for things and people. And so you're teaching them the value that goes along with it. Whereas I think so many times when you're in survival, it's like you're just focused so much on save to survive rather than all of the things that go with it. Like when you're teaching out of fear based on not getting into that situation again versus where you are teaching out of what you want them to get out of it, what you're leaving them instead of what you're not wanting for them.
Yeah, for me, I would like to have told them that money is a tool.
Right, yeah, it's a tool.
It's not hoarding, as you said. It's not this, it's not that. But it's also to be used as a tool and to enjoy. And I think my generation, a lot of us didn't enjoy our monies. We were in a survival mode until our kids got to a certain age. And then after that, things kind of lightened up a little bit. But I find that I know personally of one person that is, middle-aged man, and he simply does not know how to manage his money and use it as a tool. But he's, how can I say, mismanaging it. And then it ends up being, he's having to have people bail him out all the time.
Yeah.
And so I find that, and, so because he's a middle-aged man, you can tell it's Baby Boomer that brought him up. So the sad part for me, I would have to say, when I see millennials struggle because they look at money not as a tool, but using it for different purposes.
Yeah. That's an example of a lesson that you guys were so focused on survival, maybe that you didn't teach the values that went along with it. Is there other things that you think that boomers left on the table, I guess, because they were so focused on survival and building security and safety, that they didn't pass down to the next generation that they maybe should have?
Are you talking with respect to money or
just,
other things?
Just other values.
I think other values. I think parenting. I think a lot of parenting issues have come forth now in the millennials, where, as you made mention of it, where, there's boundaries and so on and so forth. And I think that we didn't know.
Right.
We didn't know how to show our kids how to be the best parents. And we didn't. We left that on the table. So money, parenting, teaching women how to be wives to their husband. A lot of us moms didn't do that correctly. So our daughters ended up struggling in ways that they should never have, because the scriptures do talk about an older woman teaching the younger women how to love their husbands, take care of their kids.
And I was thinking of that this morning too. And I was like, we almost have it backwards now, where the older generation is telling bad things to the younger generation.
Meaning what?
They're horror stories of birth, horror stories of how it's so hard to have kids, how you don't want to get married because half of the men in divorce. We're spreading more fear from the older generation. And granted, they had to go through a lot of hard things, but by just focusing on what you want to avoid, you're not teaching them those good things.
It's because, again, it comes right out of the need basis and the survival basis that we all went through. And so then we give it to the next generation, which is not fair and not right. But because of our own mindsets and our own, we need a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
All of us need a paradigm shift. But you're right, as far as giving the worst case scenario. You hear a lot of women saying, oh my God, I had such a hard time in childbirth. Well, of course, the daughter and whoever's listening thinks, oh, I don't
not
want to
gonna
do that.
or I don't want to be a housewife. I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom, whatever. Because we also need to hear the stories of how great it was and how it's challenging, but you will learn and you have the tools and there is ways that you maybe haven't considered and could make it a lot easier rather than fighting the same fight over and over and over again. But I think just by like avoiding those topics, we're not getting anywhere.
Well, you're just basically going into my next thing I'm going to be interviewing people, and it's going to be titled, Tell Me Your Story.
Right. Okay.
Because there's a lot of stories that are being told that need to be told. And this is for the next segment or some segments ahead here. I have met some gentlemen when I was down in Texas with respect to the Vietnam War. And so, of course, we know all about the Vietnam War because we were alive at that time. You guys haven't got any clue about the Vietnam War, nor would you even care about it.
No.
Primarily, however, there's a story to be told, and you talk about trauma a lot and the post-traumatic stress disorder that these gentlemen and women in the military are really facing. And so they've got a story that needs to be told, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and be able to help the generations after them be able to see things on a balanced perspective.
Yes, and it helps them to value what they went through and not be forgotten. And not that all of their heartache and trauma and everything was for nothing. And it helps you to understand the importance of certain things. We lose in society because we don't think it's not relevant to us, but it probably is a lot more relevant than we realize.
I think it is. And I like what you said because it just triggered a memory because there's a lot of people my age, baby boomers, that don't think they're relevant anymore and they don't have anything to share anymore. And I think that's why a lot of people then end up in nursing homes, long-term care homes, very angry, sick, and bitter because they didn't feel like that they had anything to contribute anymore.
Right.
And I do think
they do. Even after retirement, I was talking to a lady and I was like, you're ready to retire, but we still need everything you learned throughout your career. And just because you're not working with a patient one-on-one doesn't mean you can't educate. Like it's almost like we need to shift from career doing into, okay, now we're into education, but we just need to learn the right way to go about it and then how to actually have the younger generation be ready to listen.
Right.
And I think, I was thinking about this, I think a lot of it would come to helping the older generation meet the younger generation where they are. Because the younger generation likely is not going to come meet you where you are. If we can help the older generation meet them where they are. So where they are, they're on social media, they're on podcasts or whatever. And then they might see it and experience it. And they might experience something different than what they had thought in their head.
Yeah.
And so then they are more open to hearing the stories and the values and the education that those people have to offer.
Because it'll benefit you.
Yeah. Because they're looking for it. They're looking for answers.
Yeah.
And it's just, you have sometimes young people leading young people. And so you might know what works in this moment, but does it work in 20 years? Like, is that going to be a good end solution? But somebody who's walked through it for their whole life and has seen it and experienced it, they might have more to say.
I think so too. And I think it is a matter of trust being built between the two generations, or all the generations actually.
Yeah.
And I do think that going back to church a little bit and stuff, I think that there are older people that are not being used.
There's not a place for them.
Yeah, because I look at it and I see the different generations in church overall, not our church by and large, but it's just overall. And it's like there's baby boomers are my age and up that are not really serving anymore because they feel like that they have no purpose. And I think that there is a purpose for us, for sure. Like, I don't believe in retiring. I believe in refiring. I do.
Good.
I believe in refiring because God's not looking for retirement.
You know, I've known too many. They work their entire life, they retire, and then they lose all sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And then, like
down.
You need to have a sense of purpose and something that wakes you up in the day. And and balance throughout it all. I think
Oh, for
that's a
sure.
big thing that we've learned from their generation is
Yeah.
that you have to balance and maintain your
Yeah, you do.
family, your own health. But then if you can balance it, and if you're doing it in a way that you enjoy, that gives you purpose, then you can do it, forever. Like, why do you need to retire when you're doing it that way?
That's true. You know, when you were talking, I was thinking about, I was very busy in the ministry for many years, nigh on 40. And so 40 years. And you asked previously about what have we left on the table.
Yeah.
And what I left on the table was making ministry, work, etc., more important than my family, more important than my husband, so on and so forth. Now, did that mean that I didn't take care of things? Yes, I
Right.
did take care of things. But I do think that I ended up shifting the priorities because of what I thought should be done in ministry and work. And I think my family suffered somewhat from it. And I think that as a boomer, I'd be able to look back on my life and say, I missed it there and there. Then my children, who are now middle-aged,
Right.
they suffered because of my lack of understanding and not understanding the priorities, where you talk about priorities all the time. So those are the things that I just really admire about you, because you are in a position now in your life at a very young age where you're looking at it much better than I ever did, because my mindset was, I got to get it done. This is what I got to do for God, and ended up deprioritizing myself on top of it. Right. So I've learned a lot of lessons in that I can say to young and upcoming people in the ministry and stuff, not just in the ministry, but in the workplace and so on and so forth. You've got to prioritize yourself.
And I think that's why self-reflection is so good, because had you never had that realization, you wouldn't be able to tell the next generation that's up and coming, don't do that. And the only reason I know to do that is because I listen to other people who are older than me and who say, like, no, you need to have balance or you're going to burn yourself out. You're not good for anybody if you're burnt out, if your body gives out, if your mind gives out. Like, so we wouldn't have those lessons if somebody wasn't able to look back at themselves, even like a little bit harshly, and be like, I missed it. I shouldn't have done that. And so for me, then I have to look at myself too and be like, I have to be okay expressing my weaknesses so that I can help people who are just a little bit younger than me not experience the same thing. So it's a very important strength that you have, to have that capacity to be able to do that. And I think when you're being real and honest about stuff like that, it makes the bridge between generations a lot easier. I think there's like this assumption that both sides think they're right and they did nothing wrong. You know?
That's
like,
true.
I think they think that of us, we think that of them, but I don't think, if you really talk to somebody one-on-one, you don't see that as true. You see where, like, oh man, I don't know what I'm doing. I messed that up there. I'm just trying my best to juggle everything. Or, yeah, I did all that and that was great, but I missed it there. And when you talk to somebody face to face, you're able to see them for who they are, more of their humanity rather than just like a generalized version.
So how would you personally deal with someone a baby boomer who has really hooped it? How would you approach it?
Right.
And I think we all have issues with our moms.
Yes.
And our daughters have issues with us. And so what would you do if you were a mother?
I'm the mom.
You're the mom. And your daughter is not open to speaking with you because of the difference of opinion, because you did and said things unbeknownst to you that ended up causing some problems. How would you, as a mother, deal with that?
Okay, so my kids are little still. I'm not there, but I do think this starts now. And it starts now by building trust and protecting the bond and the trust that you have with them. If they can trust you, like right now, my kids are 5 and 3. If I am ever too sharp, if I'm sighing more than normal because I'm having a hard time, I'm not just going to brush it off and be like, I'm the mom, I'm right, I'm having a hard time,
Mhm.
he needs to deal with it. I'm going to go to him and be like, man, I'm so sorry. I am having a hard day. Like real time in the moment, addressing my failures to him or giving him the ability to disagree with me. So I'm putting those things from the very beginning that I think as he gets older, build trust.
But
So
what if it's been already broken for 20
fast
years?
forward. So if I'm older, trust is broken.
Yes.
If I've missed it, there's been different things that have happened, maybe because of my own trauma. Life was hard. There was
Sure.
circumstances. I think it starts with having compassion for myself about what I was going through and understanding that. And then I think it's if I was unintentionally harmful to them, then I'm glad that they are protecting themselves and that they're safe. I would pray for them. If I had any way to reach out, I'd be like, I'm proud of you for doing this. I think if it's important to your healing and for the person that you are becoming, then I love you and I miss you. I think lead with vulnerability. I think so many times what happens is people get they're emotional.
Yes.
With your family, that's the highest emotions, right? Because
Yeah.
your heart's involved. But I think if you can just zoom out your perspective a little bit and look at it like, if I'm harming them, if I'm stopping them from becoming who they need to become, I don't want to do that. Sometimes it just needs a little removal for a short period of time.
Of course.
Then you do it. I miss you. Instead of leading with trying to get control, judgment, criticism, that's not going to get them closer to you.
No, true.
But so many times they'll use guilt, shame, name calling, criticism, all of these things. And then at the end of it, they'll say, it's just because I really miss you and I love you so much. It's like, okay, throw out all that stuff and lead with your heart.
Yeah.
Lead with, I miss you.
Yeah.
Don't put your feelings on them. Say, if this is what you need, I can handle my own feelings. I'm going to make my life what it needs to be. I'm going to work on improving myself. I'm proud of you. Whenever you want to reach out, I'm here and I'll check in. But if you ever need me to absolutely stop, I trust you. It's trusting that you raised them to be this strong, amazing person. And and then when you go to prayer, you're trusting God that he can handle it. He can turn their hearts more than you pressuring them ever could.
Interesting. Very good thoughts.
That's my perspective. I don't know. I think there's a lot that comes with it through life, but
for sure.
I think what I see a lot is just people don't want to lead with their heart because that's very scary. If I lead with my heart, I will get shut down. I will get, like say you have an abandonment wound and you lead with your heart and just say, man, I'm really sad. I'm really sad we're not talking. Then they think they're going to get shut down again.
Yeah.
But if you can lead with that, as hard as it is, that person will not feel attacked and threatened by you. And maybe it will open a door and then just lead with curiosity and like, how could I show up in a way that would feel good to you? How can I respect you? And how can we work on building the trust that has been broken? And I think it's going to be a slow process to build trust. But I think if you can start with curiosity, build trust, and just have respect for that person as an individual separate from you, then I think those would be the tools that you need to start building trust again.
So there's that.
Yes.
There's that
Yes.
difference between millennials and boomers once again, which is really when you think about our conversation for the last bit, it's all been about communication, trust, and what about this then? Just a thought with respect to what is the responsibility of the grown child?
Okay.
In your opinion?
In my opinion, the responsibility of the grown child is to protect themselves enough to take on their own healing and get healed so that they're not being constantly triggered or sent into a trauma response when they're around somebody. I think with that comes clarity, and with that clarity, then you can see what kind of a relationship you can have, and you can have that relationship. But I think there's a lot when you're not healed yet and you're going around somebody, you're always going to end up more immature because you're triggered and you're in a trauma response, and it's not going to help you get to where you need to be. But if you can separate just for a short period of time to get clarity, don't do it just to like cut everybody off, but to do it to get clarity and healing, and then come back and say, we want a relationship. I want a relationship, but then it would just be to hold your own boundaries, I guess, in a respectful way where you're not going to be harmed. And the point of a boundary is to maintain the relationship. So the goal of a boundary is to be like, how can we have a good relationship ongoing, and that they can understand how they can show up in that relationship in a respectful, healthy way.
There's a lot of emotionalism in relationships, which is absolutely detrimental, whether they're boomers or whether they're Gen Xers and Zers and whatever. I think that the emotionalism on both parts of it has really played a very detrimental factor in the relationship. And so if the emotions can be set aside and we become rational human beings to be able to rationally discuss things, it doesn't matter what age we are. I think we all have to stay rational. I was talking to a psychologist actually a number of weeks back, and I was talking with them, and he said that fundamentally 80% of conversations between people generally, 80% is emotionalism and 20% is rationalism. And so I thought that was very interesting myself, to be honest. But we've gone over our time now, so I'm going to have to wrap it up. I'm sure it's just been a wonderful time with you. You've sparked some interest in my mind. I'm going to be contemplating this because it's been very good. I'd like to have you back sometime because I would like to talk to you about some other issues that society is going through right now with respect to family matters and dynamics and how that all works. I've been married now for the second time, and there have been some family dynamics that have come up with me, both on the good side and on the negative side. And I'd like to talk to you about that because I know there's some things that you could probably share that might be really helpful. So I really appreciate your time. And so I'd like to see you another time.
Yes, it's been so fun. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening. I hope that you guys have really gleaned some things from our conversation. It's kind of like table talk. We've just been bantering back and forth a little bit, talking. And I really like the fact that Brittanie was able to expound on some of the information that she's gleaned over her young years. And so please tune in the next time. I'm sure it's going to be some very exciting content that you're going to really enjoy. Until the next time, bye-bye.